I'm joined today by Duncan McNeil, best known to most of our people as Tom Paris from Voyager. Mm-hmm. Good morning, how are you?
Good morning, yes, I'm good.
Excellent, right. I've got a few quick-fire questions for you, but we'll see how quick they are.
Okay.
First of all, the Voyager question.
Yes.
So the character of Tom Paris. Now, is he really the ultimate action hero? Because he's the pilot, he's an engineer, he designs the Delta Flyer, he's a family man, he's a big brother to Harry Kim, he rescues the entire crew and the ship when the Kazon take over it. He's a man of action, isn't
Yes,
he?
he is.
Yeah.
Yes, he's a Renaissance man. I like to think of him as a Renaissance man. I feel like Tom Paris is very much the quintessential Star Trek character. You know, he's got a lot of the qualities of, you know, kind of courage and action that you talk about. I also think that in a way, you know, Paris's evolution as a character kind of represents Star Trek's evolution in a lot of ways, you know. Even though Star Trek was very groundbreaking in its early days in terms of racial issues or stereotypes, things like that, there's still a lot of evolving that Star Trek needed to do, bringing on a female captain for the first time, or bringing gay characters into the franchise, or all kinds of things that took a while for it to evolve. So I think Tom Paris sort of represents that same sort of evolution. He started as one kind of character and sort of became, through his participation with the team and being a man of action and all those things you listed, he sort of evolved into something a little more enlightened. So
in Caretaker, the first officer, whose name escapes me because we didn't really get to know him.
Yes, we did.
He as the Voyager is thrown from the Alpha Quadrant to the Delta Quadrant, for some reason runs across the bridge, and I remember this. He just goes like this, waving his arms around, and dies. Hence, Paris steps up to the mark, doesn't he, as the de facto really action character.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm trying to remember the actor's name.
Can you remember the character?
No, I can't remember the character. But the actor's name was Jeff. He's a big theater actor out of New York. I can't think of his name right now. Wonderful actor, actually.
We didn't get to see very much of him, though, did we?
He ran like that? I don't recall. I do remember he died, but I didn't remember this part. You know, there was a style of stunt work on Star Trek that was quite theatrical, I guess I would say. The little extra things like that our stunt department would do is a little dated, I guess I would say, but that's funny.
A little birdie has told me that you're into motorbikes.
Yes, I am.
So what is it that draws you to motorbikes?
Boy, that's a nice Freudian question, I guess. Well, you know, my interest in motorbikes started when I was young. I lived in Georgia, outside of Atlanta, Georgia, and there was a family of 4 brothers that lived down the street from me, and they seemed to be the most exciting family I'd ever met because they had little motorbikes, you know, dirt bikes, mini bikes we'd call them, or they had canoes, they had rafts, they had campers. It just seemed like that family of 4 boys, and they did every activity a boy could ever want to do when you're young, you know, outdoorsy and bonding and nature and all those things. And my mother would forbid me from riding on those little mini bikes or motorbikes. And the brothers would take them out in the woods. We lived near a lot of land and woods and things with trails, and they'd take them out, you know, by themselves without a parent or anyone around. And so, of course, since my mother said I was absolutely forbidden to do that, what do you think I did? I rode on the little, you know. I had no choice. She forbid it, so I had to do it.
Oh, I see.
And, it just became this forbidden thing, and I think that was part of it. It just seemed so exciting. So anyway, that's how it started for me, was riding little, you know, small little dirt bikes and falling over and riding around. It was just so much fun. And then cut to years later, I was doing a movie called Masters of the Universe. And I was about 21 years old. And in California for a long stretch for the first time in my life to make this movie. And it was so beautiful. The weather was so nice, and the beaches and the canyons, and there were a lot of motorcycle riders. And so I decided what I needed was to buy an old used motorcycle to have in California, because that would be the way to experience California. And it was just amazing. I bought an old Suzuki 450, GS 450, and not a fancy bike at all, but I got to ride it into the ground out there and just have so much fun exploring California for the first time. And it was great. And I've had motorcycles ever since.
So the reason I asked about it was because I wondered if your liking for motorbikes was in any way relevant to the Delta Flyer, which was the souped-up hot rod that Voyager had and Paris created. Did you have any input into saying that could we have something souped up and cool?
Right. I don't think it came directly. I know it didn't come directly from me. I never went to the writers and said, hey, could you tell this story or that story? I didn't feel like it was my place. But I did have a Harley Davidson back then that I rode to work a lot and talked about a lot, and was into the kind of at that point the Harley Davidson lifestyle, leather jackets and boots and patches and all that, and I think the writers were aware of that. So I do think that there was some influence, because that was my hobby, and I really enjoyed it and talked about it a lot. I think there was some influence with the Harley Davidson being sort of an American icon, kind of 20th century icon, for them to sort of write in these muscle cars and things like that Tom Paris enjoyed. They definitely, the writers get to know the actors as the show starts filming, and they pull from the actors their interests. Kate Mulgrew was very fascinated with Ireland and Irish history and Irish culture, and so that was a big part of Ireland being part of her character, and and the holodeck programs and things that came into our show. Bob Picardo was interested in opera and music. He had an interest in those things, and I think they kind of noticed that and thought, wow, what if the Doctor sang an opera song? Or
let's use that.
Yeah, exactly. So they definitely pick up on things that are big and small and sort of include them into the characters. That happens. I see that happen all the time with now that I'm directing and producing. We get to know an actor, and the things that their strengths, their weaknesses, their interests become part of. You think about how you can use that as part of your storytelling.
So spinning off from that, and this is a two-part question, because I'd like you to answer it as you and in character as Tom Paris. If you had your choice of any spacecraft, any show, any film, what would you have? So you can have the Delta Flyer, you can have the Millennium Falcon, X-Wing, whatever. Right.
Interesting. Yeah, the Millennium Falcon would be a fun ship. That would be a lot of fun.
Is that you or is that Tom?
As me, probably. As Tom, I don't know. I think he's got his heart in the Delta Flyer. I think he'd stick with it. He'd probably make some upgrades and some, customize it a little more. But yeah, I think he'd stick with the Delta Flyer.
Okay. Moving on to your directorial work.
Yes.
So I think you said in your talk yesterday that you went largely from Voyager into directing. You didn't do much acting, you said, after that. And there's a lot of famous Trek alumni, of course, who are directors, Mr. Shatner, Mr. Nimoy, Jonathan Frakes, LeVar Burton's name a few. Is there a particular fast track that Star Trek actors have into directing? Because there seem to be so many who've done it.
There do seem to be so many. I mean, I think one of the reasons that there's so many is because the franchise tends to run for a long time, even with Leonard and Bill Shatner. Even though the series only ran 2 years, the movies lasted a long time. So their involvement with the franchise, I think over time you start to look outside of just the simple acting focus and look at the other parts of the process that interest you. So I think if you look at any long-running show or franchise, I bet you'd see a similar sort of involvement of actors and stars getting behind the scenes in one way or another. or coming on as a producer, a consulting producer of some sort. So I think it's more about the length of the show and the run of the show and things like that. I don't think there's a particular fast track. I mean, I do know that I expressed interest literally on day one.
Yes, you just said that downstairs.
Of the pilot. And I do remember when I got the opportunity, because Jonathan Frakes had to back out of an episode to start prepping First Contact, the film. So I had to step in very quickly and very suddenly because I'd been shadowing and preparing. I think Rick felt comfortable having me step into that role. I do remember after I directed the next episode, there was a director who'd done a lot of episodes for us, and he started directing and I was acting in the episode, and there must have been 4 or 5 actors sitting around the monitor shadowing for the first time, because I think when they saw that I actually got an episode, everybody was like, oh wow, this could really happen. And I remember Les Landau was the director's name. He was like, can you guys please just back off? Like, it was too many people. So yeah, I think that the fact that actors got an opportunity, that it actually happened, inspired it was kind of contagious. You'd see a lot of people expressing interest or curiosity. Bob Picardo directed a couple of episodes. Tim Russ directed. Andy Robinson directed on our show. Me, Roxanne. I think that's it for our show. And then a number of behind-the-scenes people, editors, visual effects people, things like that.
Okay, well, the final thing I wanted to ask you about is Chuck.
Yes.
Everybody loves Chuck.
Everybody does love Chuck.
And it is simply this: how did you put into Chuck so much heart? Because it is a show with so much heart, isn't it? You cannot help but love the characters.
Yeah. I think a lot of that really has to do with the actors. Zach Levi puts his heart and his passion in everything he does. He has a really big heart, and I think that shows. It's contagious. Sarah Lancaster, who played his sister, Yvonne Strahovski, Josh Gomez, everybody, Adam Baldwin, everybody. There was a sweetness and a sincerity. I also think some of that sincerity came from Chris Fedek, who created the show with Josh Schwartz, but it was a lot of Chris Fedek's heart in the show. It was his very first TV show he'd ever created. And I think that brings a lot of heart. When you've got writers who are seeing their dreams come true for the first time and able to create characters, they haven't gone through the process over and over and gotten jaded to writing stories. So every story, I think, was filled with Chris Fedek's heart, and he was a great sort of guiding light of what that show was about. And the writer's room on that show was one of the most talented writer's room I've ever seen in my career. I mean, every single person in that writer's room has gone on to create and run big television shows. And we just happened to catch all of them at a moment in time when they were available to just be writers in a room. And so it was a wonderful group of writers. And again, like I said, the actors, and we got so many wonderful guest stars who were huge, iconic actors at one time or another in their career, who were willing to come in and play this fantasy out, for a week or so and have fun with us. So there were so many elements to that show, sort of being having as much heart as you describe. It definitely did. Yeah.
Robbie, thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. All right. Yeah.
Thanks.
Great talking to you.